Hey guys, welcome to our podcast, Reinforcing Conversations.
We're shaping better behavior one talk at a time.
I'm Christina Torres.
And I'm Nicole Stewart. And today we are going to talk about reinforcing being a parent and a BCBA,
Woo, woo.
which I'm really excited for because this is my life. This is it. I'm parent and I BCBA, and that's all I do. So,
I know, especially like there's so many BCBAs that are parents, but also too, it's like, we work with children a lot. So, and also we support parents. So it's cool to have that parent perspective to be able to shed light from our professional lens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's hard, I struggle, and people can feel free to email us their feedback on this. I struggle when I am training new people and I focus on like, well, this is how being a parent has changed my practice. And I have this like 23-year-old who is not a parent and not at that stage in their life, or even like their friends or parents or anything, how to help them understand what that means in a way that is also respectful of that period of their life. Because when I was 23, I didn't know what it was like to be a parent either. And I practice in a different way as well. So I want to respect that is also an important time in your life, but also becoming a parent has radically shifted who I am as a behavior analyst.
Yeah, I know before I became a parent, I'm like, of course I know what a mother's love feels like. I love all my kids. But then when you become a mom and her parents, like, oh my goodness, I know what the love is like now. I get it. Especially like, we're supporting learners with autism too. So for families to trust us to care for their child is so important. So we're gonna dive into all that, guys.
Yes.
Before we dive in, these are some of the learning objectives that we're going to go over throughout this podcast. So, behavior analysts will identify personal circumstances that serve as setting events for their practice in ABA. The second objective is behavior analysts will identify barriers that parents with neurodivergent and special needs children face when in treatment. And then the last objective will be behavioral analysts will explore behavior analytic strategies for maintaining professional and personal life balance to prevent burnout.
Which is key. When Christina and I got on the call this morning, I was like, I'm here. I don't know. I'm alive. I might be feeling a little burnt out myself. And so this is going to be a really applied conversation because it happens where we all feel burnt out. And parenting days, when you're parenting and working, your days can go from 6 a.m. or earlier to 10 p.m. or later, with like also disruptions in between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Absolutely. And also be business owners too. That's another variable, right? There's a lot of more contingencies to be mindful of.
Yes.
I know I had to give Nicole a little pick me up. It's like, girl,
Yes.
listen, you're never going to be put through anything you can't get through. So you're just shaping your tolerance.
Yeah. And I was a little childlike. I was like, I guess that's true.
I know. You're entitled to be in a funk, guys. It's okay to be in a funk.
Yep. And I'm okay. I got my caffeine. I'm like warming up. I'm feeling good. I'm excited to be here. I feel like sometimes it's hard to switch. My younger son wakes up at 6 a.m. My kids don't go to school till like 9 in the morning, which is insane. And then sometimes it can be challenging to then, after parenting for 3 hours, to then switch my brain into work mode, especially if I'm just doing paperwork and I'm kind of by myself, because I come home and I'm like,
yeah.
And you want to kind of melt, but actually like I need to put myself back together and do my work day. So being here and having this purpose for this moment is actually very helpful for me, because I often find that like left to my own devices, that transition time can be really rocky for me.
Well, I'm so happy that this is reinforcing for you, especially in this moment.
Yes. So I'm glad we are here and I'm glad we are doing this.
Let's talk about the transitions from BCBA to parent, right? Like some of the lessons that we've learned. So we have like what we like to do is kind of have like a little breakdown of what we kind of want to target during our discussions. So we're kind of going to go through them together. So Nicole, you're a mom way before I was. My daughter's going to be 3 in May. How old are your kids?
6 and 10.
And you got 2.
I know. So they'll be 7 and 11 in May and June.
And then you got 2 boys too.
2 boys. 2 boys, lots of energy. I would say like I've definitely learned that younger boys seem to have more energy, but the stereotypes are not always true. Done things with groups of girls where I'm like, I thought you guys were going to be easy and I was wrong. My house has a lot of energy and a lot of fighting, and it is what it is. So I've been a parent for almost 11 years. I mean, I was pregnant 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Now, how has being a parent like really changed your perspective on child behavior analysis?
Yeah, that's like such a good question because I think I've had these stages where I've evolved over the years. And I think I look back on who I was before I became a parent in general, and I was very organized. I liked all my ducks in a row. I got everything done. If I told you I was going to do something, I did it. And since becoming a mom, that's a lot less true because I have a lot more ducks to get in a row. And sometimes my ducks are running around in circles and hitting each other, refusing to get into the line. And there's just so many more things that come up. So I think like my organizational skills used to be really like a strength of mine, and my diligence and my work ethic was a strength of mine. And I think over the last 11 years, I've definitely seen a decline in that, or I have to put more intentionality into that. I would also wonder, like I will say in 11 years, the technology that changes that have come about as well.
Yeah.
Since my first son was born, have also been harder for me to keep up with. I think when I was just a BCBA and only working, I was able to like, okay, I'm going to dedicate time to learn this electronic management software. Now it's like, I don't have that time. I got to pick someone up. I got to be somewhere else. I can't take from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to figure out how to use a software and then know how to use it for the rest of my week anymore. So I think that kind of stuff has declined, but I think that my soft skills and my compassion and my levity have all improved over the years. My ability to not be as perfect and fit into this box and be okay with it has gotten a lot better. And I think I have a lot more compassion for what our families go through. And it's really changed what I look for in like functional goals for my clients and meaningful goals for my clients, because I also think about like, oh, I'm going to pick a skill and then they're not going to use it in a few years. I'm going to try to pick a skill that they're going to grow into, or I'm going to try to pick something that's meaningful for the whole family in addition to the client. And I think it like has given me this different perspective on the parents, on how I fit into the child's life compared to the parent, because the parent is raising their child forever. I might be there I have kids I've been with for years, but I'm not going to be with them forever like the parent will be. And so like, I'm still just a stop on their road. And I do have to be respectful that like my job is to help them pave the road, not necessarily design it myself. And that they still get the autonomy to be who they want to be as a parent.
Ooh, I love that you said that. I'm gonna have to write that down. We're gonna have to put that on, like on our page. You said,
and like some parents, yeah, they want my opinion on the design and like what we're going to work on and what to focus on. And other parents are like, this is how our life runs and this is how things are going to work. And I think ABA is like a weird space, right? Because we're like not a school, we're not a doctor, we're in this weird space, and like sometimes we're in their homes. But it's like not my job to tell them how to run their home. And it's not my job to tell them how to parent.
Yep. Yeah. It's just we're in a position to really give them a behavioral perspective of understanding things in a way that they can adjust, right? Their own behavior to better understand their child and set the home up for success. A lot of people don't even work in the homes too. That's another thing to be mindful of. If you're a BCBA and you've never worked in a home, or if you're an RBT, I suggest getting some exposure in the home setting, guys, because you're going to be able to contact different contingencies, but you'll also be able to really understand, what the families really go through. So
yes,
it's an environment that everyone should try to get some type of exposure in for sure.
Yes. And I will say I had a home case back when I was in Boston. And I was like, why are we not working on this? And I was really outspoken. And I still think about that. And I'm like, oh, I would have hated me too if I were that parent, because I was so insistent that it had like, if you want ABA, you have to do it this way, which is like the heart of ABA's problem.
Well, look, we get to reflect and see like the field is forever evolving, and so is our practice and our approach,
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're having these meaningful conversations to shape better behavior.
Yes. I feel like I really learned from that experience where I was like, why are we not having them do this and do that? And what are you like, just letting them do nothing all day is how I felt. And now I look back and I'm like, one, that was the parents' right as a parent. And they also were kind of neurodiversity affirming before that was a trend. And I look back and think very differently about that as a parent now, and would have responded to myself the same way that parent did, of like, I don't need you in my home anymore, which is okay. It is what it is. I've learned. And I think as a parent, I've really shifted my mindset on a parent's role in their child's treatment team as the expert on their child and what they're looking for and what their hopes and dreams are for their children. Obviously, for kids who are also verbal or have the capability, being able to recognize and help the parents understand that the child's lens as well. Even still, like some parents, like different cultures raise their kids. This is how you do, this is what you do, and this is what you follow. And it's not necessarily my place to say, like, well, I think your child should have a say in whether or not they get screens. Okay, the kid, maybe my goal has to be helping the child tolerate that with the parent, or working better, advocating for themselves instead of trying to convince this parent that they have to change their whole cultural norms.
And you said it too. It's the parent is the professional on their child. If you're a
Yeah.
parent and you're listening and you're unsure if you're not happy or satisfied with like services, reach out to the BCBA, but you're also entitled to, switch providers if you're interested, if you wanted to. But yeah, I know it's hard too as like a professional, because it's like we have a different lens, but also too, it's like our job to really, like you said, customize our approach and what we're here for, specifically for the parents and what they're looking for help on, So
I wonder how your experience, because your daughter was in the NICU. So your transition from becoming a BCBA to a parent had this whole big overwhelming punctuation mark in it. What was that like?
oh my gosh. So for those of you guys that are new, I had my daughter at 25 weeks and I was 31 when I had her. So my placenta ruptured out of nowhere. And obviously we're not expecting her to come so early, but she did come, right? And when I found out I was pregnant, I was so excited because I always was excited to become a mom, but also too, it's like I decided to like do the whole career route, go to school, get a degree, get your career going, so that by the time I am a parent, I have more flexibility. But anyways, I was so excited to become a mom, and I'm like, I can't wait to teach her and read her all these books and enrich her environment and teach her how to advocate and teach her to be kind. Blah, out of nowhere, she decides to come. And it was so hard because, this is my first time being a mom. And then I had to wait hours to see her. So I had to wait about like 4 hours before I could actually meet my daughter.
Wow.
I had to do the C-section. So I'm just like anticipating waiting. And I know other people have met her and I'm just dying to see her. And then, they wheel me in and I could see her little feet. And it was so sucky because I couldn't hold her for like the first 2 weeks because she's intubated. I could just in her foot, but ABA definitely helped me get through the NICU because I really had to accept like, hey, this is just temporary. This is a whole process, like a shaping process. There's milestones that she has to reach. But as a mom, even in that environment too, it's like there's so many people involved and like authoritative figures like the doctors, and like I have to like they know what they're doing, and it's like I'm just a mom sitting here waiting every 4 hours to hold her. But also I had to learn how to advocate and like speak up when I was uncomfortable and take a ton of data so that I can analyze it and be her advocate because she can't speak up for herself, And especially since there's so many nurses in and out, it's like she's just another number to them. But it's like she's my daughter, So it was really hard to kind of feel like a real mom because there was so much stuff out of my control. Like I couldn't carry her when I wanted to. I couldn't there were just so many limitations, and I just had to sit there and wait. So it really was stinky. And then one of the things that was really hard too is, while we were there for 107 days, so 4 months. And we had about 5 to just suck when I leave. So instead of like being like, oh, like they get to leave, I was excited for that mom because it's so hard when you have to live every day without your child. And I would just like change my mindset of like, hey, we'll have our day one day. But right now and I'm like, yeah, this is actually our first day home as a real family and our real home. Like, what?
Yeah.
So it was really hard to kind of like feel like a mom. Oh my gosh. And then also too, I'll share a little story too, because in the NICU, when they're that little, they have care times. And so they're about every 4 hours. And so I would always try to make it to like catch, because I would always go home and then come back to visit the hospital. So I remember this one time, and like the care times is like when you can actually touch her and like you could throw her up and then they weigh her and you change her diaper. And then they change the dressing so they take the hat off so you could actually see what she looks like, all that stuff all over the place. And I remember I called and I was letting them know like, hey, I'm on my way. I'm going to be there for the care time. And that's like the only time I really felt like a mom, to be honest. So to make a long story short, I already called. They're like, oh yeah, no problem. I walk in and the nurse is finishing her care time. And I literally down. And it's like I spoke with you, you said yes. And she's like, oh, well, she was uncomfortable. And it's like, how dare you take that moment away from me when I called you? And I was just so upset.
Yeah, of course you were.
It sucks so bad. Yeah, it was The transition from BCBA to parent was a different experience for me, but like I said, I utilized ABA to help me get through the NICU. I used my skill set as a BCBA to take data, analyze it, advocate for her. But yeah, it definitely changed my perspective once I became a mom. And I use ABA all the time with my daughter. So I definitely leverage the science to enrich her environment and also like navigate stuff in my house, especially when it comes to like for me to get chores done and like to build her attention span of
Yeah.
to like, hey, occupy herself with like books or games and stuff, or arranging the environment to benefit me without her realizing it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like environmental modification. That story sounds so impossibly hard. And I think also listening to it reminds me a lot of my kids who have more like rare genetic disorders and have spent time in the hospitals and their parents' experiences, which I think have also really humbled me because, like you said, you're like, I'm just another, like, this is just another number, another kid that they're going to see. These NICU nurses are going to see hundreds. It's not that they don't care. They love your baby as much as they can, but they have to love everybody's baby as much as they can, in the same way that we love everybody's child as much as we can. But then they move on. There are kids that I had 20 years ago that I don't see it, I can't see them, but their parents are still their parents. And so I feel like I really get that perspective. Like, you must really feel for the families that we work with and like the struggles that they have, because you've experienced it like firsthand of like what it feels like to be kind of on this
And the
machine of
medical
like,
model end too of how they see things as well. Like before, when my water broke,
mhm,
the doctor literally like, hey, you got to sign this form. Basically, they were saying, oh, just to let you know, this is basically we're not liable if your child comes out with autism, neurological disorders,
mhm,
cerebral palsy. They went through a whole list of all these different disabilities that could possibly what can go wrong with my daughter because she was so underdeveloped. And
mhm.
dang, it's like that's what you're gonna have me sign off on right before I go into like, hey, how about like, hey, everything's gonna go well, da da da, da, you know what I mean? But I mean, that's kind of like the expectation of what the medical model presumes, which is kind
Mhm.
of
And
yep.
like, I
And then
think,
even the communication. Okay, my daughter, she had to have a PDA. So when babies are born extremely premature, they typically have like a hole in their heart, and they usually
mm,
give them like aspirin to close it. But my daughter's hole wasn't closing, so they have to go in and they plug it. They have to do surgery, and during that surgery, when my daughter and there's also different levels of respiratory support. So she had to go get intubated, which is the highest level. So basically, the machine is breathing for her, right? And during her recovery, her lungs collapsed. And so it's like no one's telling me this, but I had to find out because it's okay, well, why does she kind of look like that? Oh, well, her lungs is collapsed. So we have to put her on the left side. It's like, who was gonna tell me this?
yeah, yeah.
It's like they don't communicate whatsoever at all.
No.
You need to speak up and ask all these questions, especially in that type of environment, because this is everyday typical environment for them. So it's like, oh yeah. And then even another time too. So I asked to speak with one of the doctors and he basically shared like, oh yeah, with this, it's more likely that she's gonna have lung issues until she's 2 because of her prematurity. And
Mhm.
she's have to go to the hospital because she's not going to be able to handle a cold.
Oh my God.
And he was absolutely right. Like for the first 2 years, if my daughter got sick, we
Yeah.
had to go to the hospital.
Wow.
So nuts. But it's like, thank you
Wow.
for telling me because if you never told me that, I would have never prepared myself for when my daughter got sick.
Right.
I always want to share
Right.
that with.
Like, what an act of compassion to give you that heads up of like, this is what to expect. I think as behavior analysts, that's often very hard. And thinking about that case that I had that I did not do well, I feel like I frightened the parents by being like, if you don't get this child in line, they're going to end up in residential or da 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 da. Like, scary. This is what their future is going to be. And I feel like it sounds like there's a much more compassionate way to do that of, helping our families understand the indirect and direct consequences without also being like horrifying, being like, hey, just like a heads up, this is like what to expect, or like this, even like, let's talk about like a behavior plan. I feel like we don't often walk through with a parent, like you might see an increase in the behavior, or like if it's not working, like I had a kid that we did RARD, the response interruption program, and he ended up becoming incredibly aggressive. And the parents were like, what is happening? And it was like an effective punishment of like, he's now
Fiction first.
exactly. And like, it wasn't effective at all. But I feel like we didn't tell the parents necessarily to expect any of that. And I think like when we say like, hey, we're implementing a behavior plan and like, here's what we expect the trends to look like. How we know your child's responding this way, that we think it might be working, or if this happens, we're going to look at this. And we don't always have all the answers.
Yeah, I know. It's so individualized and we don't know until we actually apply it, right?
Right. And I think a lot of humility in those circumstances too. I've had a situation recently that I kind of like walked into something that I don't necessarily want to get into all the details, and having humility in those circumstances of being like, yeah, like I thought I knew how to handle this and I could have handled it a little bit differently or better now that I see how it's unfolded. But this was an unanticipated outcome of that plan. And I did not know that this was going to happen, because it's not like a drug where the FDA has studied it extensively. Like we don't always know every single thing that's going to happen with every single client for every single intervention we have.
Exactly. And I love that you share that, because guys, especially as a new BCBA or like even a current practitioner, it's like you have to know what options you have and choose something, right? And you won't know until you actually apply it. And like if it worked, if it didn't work. And if it didn't work, then we got to go back to the drawing board. It's like understanding like, hey, this was a choice. We thought it was the best option. Turns out it wasn't. So it's like you're gonna have these moments where it's like, okay, dang, it didn't work. That sucked. You know what I mean? So it's like, don't be so hard on yourself, because it's like we always are coming with our best intentions, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. And that happens, right?
Yeah. And having the humility to be like, I didn't tell you this because I didn't know, or I'm just learning, or, we didn't expect because I haven't done that. Maybe your child has comorbid diagnoses and this works really well with a different profile, whatever the case may be. I think it's being able to be transparent and explain that. Cause like you said, like, why didn't anyone tell you your daughter's lung collapse? That's like crazy to me. But also like, I feel like very on brand for our field, where I feel like I've gotten kids before who are like, oh, the previous person didn't tell us that my child was having so many aggressions. What do you mean they're aggressive? And I'm like, okay, like, what do I do with this now? We need honesty. If we really want to value a parent as an equal team member, then they need to have the same information. And I think sometimes, like you said, like in the NICU, those nurses are so used to it. They're like, oh yeah, lung collapse. That probably happens to them maybe once a day. Hopefully not, but like probably happens frequently. For us, a lot of these things happen frequently, but for parents, this might be their only experience with ABA, and they might not know to expect that. And they don't know what they don't know.
Also, like being her mom and like analyzing her nonverbal behavior, it's like my daughter's personality, like even at that little, is like she was so off. And it's like, what's going on? Like, she's not like, it's like, oh, well, her lungs collapsed, so she's sedated and da 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 da. It's like, dang, like,
yeah,
like that. So,
yeah. And like, I think helping parents learn all those setting events and those things, and also to tell us those things too. Like that communication goes both ways. But gosh, what a lesson to learn, and like such a hard way.
Okay, so let's talk about navigating our BCBA brain at home and at work.
Yes.
Right? So how do you separate like your professional lens at home, or like how do you navigate parenting with ABA in your home?
Yeah, that's a good question. I ebb and flow. I'm like every other parent where I threaten to take everything away. I'm throwing the switches in the garbage. We're never having junk food again. I do all of that stuff that ABA would tell me I'm not supposed to do. I'm a human. Sometimes I have emotions. Sometimes I lose my cool.
Yes, I know. Me
and
too.
I think that it often feels like because we have all this knowledge, I have to be able to apply it at all times. And it often does make me feel like I do have to be a perfect parent. And I think when things happen with my kids, or when I make a mistake as a parent, I'm incredibly hard on myself, because I feel like I know better. Like when we say to kids, like, oh, you knew better. Yeah. And you did it anyway. That's like the story of my life when I make mistakes as a parent. I'm like, oh, Nicole, you knew better. So last night we're having an issue and he's asking me, he's saying, I feel bad. I'm telling him that I feel bad as a mom. And I'm explaining that, like, I know I feel bad right now, but I've also like taught myself that those are just my thoughts, and my thoughts are just thoughts. And that doesn't mean that that's the truth. And that just means that's how I feel in this moment. And that's taken me a really long time. And I don't think that's necessarily an ABA strategy. I think that that's years of therapy. I think that that's years like of other interventions to give myself grace. I think ABA has ACT.
Yes.
But I feel like the grace that I have learned to give myself as a parent has not come from ABA necessarily. But I do think like how I handle my kids is I try to look at things with a behavior analytic lens. For better or worse. Like yeah, I can't, that's how my brain works. I don't know
Yeah.
is that how you feel too?
Oh my gosh, it's like you can't undo like understanding, especially I'm so passionate about verbal behavior and emotional regulation
Mhm.
and like advocacy. So, and my daughter is too, so she's not as old as your kids, right? So, like as she was growing up, it's like I always wanted to be able to label what was going on so that she can understand like what her environment. For instance, like I remember when she was like probably like a year old, she was crawling or whatever, and like the vacuum fell, so it was loud and she got startled, and I explained,
Mhm.
"Oh, the vacuum fell, that was loud, it was scary," and she's crying, and I show her like, look, it fell, it was loud, that's okay, like you're safe. And then then she'd stop and also redirecting. So it's like always, I would always validate her feelings, explain what she's feeling or experiencing so that she could really understand as she's gotten older. So
Mhm.
that's one of my favorite things of not turning off my ABA brain, because I would never want to turn off a brain, especially when I know how the environment is such a huge influence of shaping her behavior. So it's
Mhm.
like those are, instead of like focusing on everything, I always just focus on like communication, emotional regulation, and advocacy. And also like that reciprocated back and forth piece. So validating what she said to me. It's like, oh, you want to go?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. First this, first then, all the time. First then, especially when it comes, if I'm trying to like wash dishes or she wants something right now, okay, you can have it. I never say no. So it's like you can have it whenever it's available that she can have it. So that's also one of the strategies that I like to use is like letting like that first then, but also letting her know like, yeah, you can have it just right, not right now. And also too, when she was a baby, so we have a dog and the dog food is in the pantry. So she would love to go splash in the water and like put the dog food in the water. So instead of me having to be like, no, 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 I would just literally make the response effort harder for her to actually get to it. So I would like
Mhm.
close the door, but the door wouldn't close all the way. So I'd close the door, but then I would put like the kitchen door chair in front of the door. So it would take her way longer
Yeah.
to get through it and she would lose her motivation to want to go into the pantry.
Yeah.
Just manipulating the environment like that to prevent me for having to like not reprimand her, but redirecting her for a behavior that I don't want to see to her naturally like losing motivation to get into something like that.
Yeah. I always did more find an alternative behavior,
Mhm.
um, where I would look for like, okay, you want to get in the pantry and put stuff in the water? Like, let's fill up a tub of water and we'll go get some rocks and you can play with the rocks in the water instead of the food in the water. Uh, which I feel like is I guess it's still an ABA thing. It's like, I'd be like, what are you trying to get out of this? Let's meet that need in a way that is like not as disgusting as putting dog food in water and like not as disruptive too, because like we don't need to be making a huge mess with the dog food in the water right now.
Especially
Yeah.
when I'm trying to wash the dishes. It's like,
Right.
girl, and also
Yeah.
it's like, whose perspective are you looking at? Are you looking at like, because you know how there's a speaker and a listener. So it's
Yeah.
like water and me, right? So in the moment, I want more time for me to focus on cleaning. So my time is way more reinforcing. So it's like, oh, let me arrange the environment. It's going to take me 12 seconds to set it all up.
Hmm.
He's going to try for 2 minutes. And now I have 4 minutes of actually getting all the dishes done. Oh, totally understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking, I guess when my older son was little, and I'll see if I can find this because I still have it, and we can put a picture of it on social media. We did sleep training with him. And I feel like this is such a good example of how I use my ABA brain. First off, I emailed a professor of one of my staff members who I like collaborated with him frequently, and his kids are probably a couple years older than me. And I emailed him and was like, what advice do you have for sleep training on like as an ABA person? And he told me the story of how he sleep trained his kids, which was also like very behavior analytic. And so my now ex-husband, who's a social worker, was my then husband, and I were kind of at odds here of like how to sleep train, which many parents face because we all come in with our own preconceived notions of how we want to parent, and that doesn't always align with our partner's parenting visions. And he came in with a social work background and I came in with an ABA background, and so that's also like a huge difference. And so he really wanted to try some of these more gentle methods, and I was also the one who was getting up a lot, and I kind of like felt like I'd assessed the situation and was like, I feel like knowing our son, he needs something more clear and concrete. And like, I really wanted to try more of like a cry it out, like, let's just rip the Band-Aid, and more extinction related. And so we did at first try something more gentle where we would sit by the crib. I also was like, I can't sit by this crib and like watch this kid cry. It's going to break my heart. But we first tried sitting by his crib and rubbing his back and not picking him up. Like, all we're going to do is like, we're going to still be there, but we're not going to pick him up. The first night it went okay. And then the second night it went pretty badly. And then the third night we thought that he maybe had reflux. So we picked him up. And then the fourth night we had friends babysit for us. And the note says like, whatever you do, don't pick him up. And within like 20 minutes, they were like, we didn't know what to do. So we picked him up. So we were all over the place. And I was like, I don't know if this is working. I don't know if it's not working. So we went back to baseline. And I was like, we need to pick him up. FR1 schedule, easiest to extinguish. We need to pick him up every single time he cries as quickly as we can so that he makes this quick association between like cry, I'm going to get picked up.
Yeah.
And then, and like, I was on a BCBA brain. Like I was, he's like, what? I don't know, 8, 9, 10 months old. And I was like, FR1 schedule. And then we went and did like the Ferber method where you like do the checks. And I took data. I was like, I need to know if this is working. And I wrote down what time we would put him down, and then what time he would fall asleep, and then what time he would wake up in the middle of the night, and then what time he would fall back asleep again. Mm-hmm. And I still have that data because I like needed it. And like, I needed to know, because the first round I was like, it felt like it worked. And then it felt like it really wasn't working. And I was like, I need to know, even if the trend is like this, are we going towards improve? Like, are there micro improvements in this? Is it worth it to let this kid cry? Because I felt like for me, and I think that's been like one of my biggest things. And I've done that in other areas of my kids' lives where I'll take data on things, because it really helps me know to like sense some of those changes. It helps take away that emotional attachment that I have with my own children and actually kind of quantify it so that I know, like, is this something that I need to be worrying about, or is this something that's trending in the right direction and I feel good about it? Because I think like my emotions make it feel worse and I can't look at it objectively. So the numbers help me.
And also too, it provides a structure, especially when it comes to like time chunking and like windows, right? I did the same thing with my daughter. So, but I actually paired her pacifier. I utilized her pacifier first. I paired it with only sleep. So whenever she would like on or like start showing like, oh, tired, I would like, oh, it's sleepy time. I would always do sleepy, sleepy, sleepy. And then I would pair the passy. And it was so consistent. Like I remember one time we went away. He was like, ah, we gotta go for vacation. His mom had her, and I literally had a breakdown of like, this is what time she eats. She's going to get up around this window, do this. She's going to knock out within 5 minutes. And they're like, holy cow, Chrissy, like this was literally on the T. Like you need to write a book. And I was like, I just am consistent. It was able to shape her behavior. She was out, utilize the passy. She would only have the passy when it was sleepy time. And then like there was a little travel binky. So if she got upset, like while we're out in the store, like here's a binky, and she'd fall back to sleep. So I was able to kind of utilize pairing the pacifier with sleeping. It kind of worked for me.
That's amazing. That's like truly amazing.
So much fun, like, shaping, like being a mom for my first year. I'm gonna ABA the hell out of this that I did.
Yeah. My 10-year-old never liked pacifiers. I feel like he's a good eater, and he's always been a good eater. And I feel like pacifiers, he was like, there's nothing for me at the end of this. Whereas my 6-year-old, like he used to suck on a finger. And that was like one. I think, you know what else? And you haven't quite gotten here yet because you haven't done potty training. Potty training was the easiest parenting experience I've had.
See, I'm potty trained right now, and it's kind of like intermittent. She's successful at school, but at home, she's just starting to pick up now at home.
Okay. Yeah. I just felt like it was something I've potty trained tens of other kids, like so many other people's children in so many different ways that I was like, I don't know. I just didn't feel worried about it. And both of my kids were potty trained by the time they were 2. And I was so whatever about the whole situation where I was just like, yeah, try to go to the toilet. And like, I taught them both because they would pee as soon as their feet would hit the bath, they would pee. And so I would just label, I'd be like, look at that, you're peeing. Oh my God, you're peeing. And then I would be like, oh my God, try to hold it. Look, you can control that. And then like, I taught them to pee in the toilet. And then from there, they wanted to pee. They were excited about it. I like made it really fun and exciting. And then they wanted to stay dry. And then they wanted to wear underwear. Like it was so easy. And I think having done it with other people's kids, and because I think seeing my non-BCBA mom friends, watching them potty train their kids, I was like, why is everyone so stressed about this? Like, it's like probably the one time where I felt like being a BCBA didn't overcomplicate my brain. And I was like, oh, I got this. I'm going to be able to do this and I'm going to be able to handle it. And I'm like, this is so not a worry of mine. Like, they'll get potty trained when they get potty trained. And because I think I was not worried about it, it was the easiest thing I've done as a parent. Like, literally the easiest thing I think I've done as a parent.
See, and like Snow, the first time I remember it was like probably like 6 months ago. She's like, Mommy, I gotta use the bathroom. And she actually went and she went number 2 on the toilet.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, mommy's not ready for the potty training. So I'm like, all right, we still chill. And she would ask like intermittently to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
Even more consistent now that she's at daycare because they're able to carry it over. So she's like 100% over there for the most part. And then at home, it's kind of like, she's still kind of like, but she's actually staying wet and she all night, which is like, ooh. So the last 2 days, she's been successful at home. So I'm also
Baby
still
steps.
like when it comes to diapers. So this was Snow's first diaper.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like when it comes to like the diapers and like the sizing up, it's like, mommy's not ready, but she's ready and she's confident.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, all right. So I'm shaping it all out, but I'm just like embracing the time. Like I said, she'll be 3 in May. So she's exactly where she needs to be.
Yeah. Oh, 100% she's where she needs to be. My kids, I feel like were early because were ready and I was ready. I was just like, well, just see where this goes. My older son went to an in-home daycare. So a lot of the kids were older also. So I think it's also easier when you're seeing other kids go to the bathroom. And then my younger son was potty trained during the pandemic. And so he's seeing his brother going to the bathroom all the time. Mm-hmm. And also like, what else are you doing when you're home together all the time? They may as well potty train you, right? Like, may as well. So I feel like it was easier because they had like the peer models and like they saw other kids doing it and they kind of got invested in it that way.
And that kind of goes into like our next topic, which is like the pressure of being like that perfect parent as a BCBA, right? It's like, yeah, well, I'm just trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to shape my daughter to be a kind person and be independent. And I'm going to make my mistakes. No one's perfect, right? Then lose our patience, right? I know I lose my patience sometimes. Like, okay, 1 second, especially when you're overstimulated. One of the things too is like when I'm washing dishes, right? I'm always cold. But like, I don't know about you, but like, I don't know if like, and I have like my robot when I'm washing dishes and then like all of a sudden I'm getting hot, but then it's like, then you get like a sweat, but you're in the middle of washing the thing. And it's like, I can't wipe my face. My hands are wet. It's like a whole process. It's like, oh my God, 1 second. I'd be like, go ask daddy. But it's like, no one's perfect. Yeah. We're going to make our mistakes and lose our patience sometimes.
Yes. I think what's hard about being a parent is that like, you don't know, I think as BCBAs, we're so used to being like, I'm going to look at this like information on a neat little graph and I'm going to see like, did I teach you this skill? Is this behavior going up or down? And I think when you're a parent, you don't truly know the outcomes for decades.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's a lot, and I think that this is both good and bad of like our ABA experience is that I can understand that what helps me in the short term might not help in the long run. Like if my kid throws a tantrum in the grocery store and I give them the candy, they're more likely to throw a tantrum in the grocery store. We know that as behavior analysts. And so I might say no to that, but I also don't know if I'm dragging my kid out of the grocery store, which I don't do. But like, let's say I am in this example, I'm dragging my kid out of the grocery store. That might end up doing more harm in the long run than having just given them the candy to get out of the store, because now I'm thinking about like how that like trauma or that experience impacts them and their development and their interactions with me and all of those pieces. My kids have big emotions and I often feel a lot of pressure to feel perfect because I have all the tools. I should know how to use them. And when I make a mistake with my kids, their emotions can be completely off kilter for weeks. And so it's like, it's a lot of pressure. It feels like a lot. And sometimes, like, quite honestly, it would be easier to just like give them the piece of candy in those moments when they're having a tough time than it would be to put my foot down, because the way that I might put my foot down might be just as problematic for them in the long run. I'm like, not saying like it's just me yelling. They just don't like to be yelled at. I feel like who likes to be yelled at? Nobody likes to be yelled at. But like when my kids get yelled at, they get off. Like it really, really affects them. It's really, really hard for them. And it's hard because then I lose my cool and then I yell and then I'm like, cool, now I have like 2 weeks. I knew better. Now I have like 2 weeks where you're going to be off because like I lost my cool.
But also too, it kind of goes into our next topic of parenting neurodivergent typical, right?
Yeah.
That that emotional regulation piece and like that understanding and all that stuff. So how is it? What are like some of the challenges that you face? Because your son has ADHD.
Yes, yes, my little guy likely does as well, but he's not diagnosed yet. Yeah, I don't know what it's like to have neurotypical children. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about accessing services as a parent or BCBA, as like a parent BCBA, but I think I was redoing a couple of authorizations for some of my clients. And so I was redoing their formal assessments and I did their Vinelands. And I have a client who's in a gen ed classroom. And I think in my generation would not have been diagnosed with anything because she masks a lot and she just appears standoffish and shy. And her Vineland came back where she's like in the first percentile, between first and fifth percentile for most of her skills.
Mm.
And I was like, man, really? Because like, again, I feel like if she'd been in my grade, nobody would have thought twice because you interact with her and sometimes you're just like, well, that was like a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
But it's not, she's verbal. She keeps up with her grade. She doesn't need an IEP. So I was really surprised to see her Vineland, which then I was like, let me do my kids' Vinelands. I wonder what those would turn out as. And I was really surprised because my 10-year-old, he's like above average in his expressive language, which was not surprising. And his coping skills are pretty low. And some of his receptive language is lower than I expected. But he overall is like right where he's supposed to be.
Mhm.
Like even the things that were a little low were less than one standard deviation from the norm.
Yeah.
And so I often find that I don't realize the challenges he faces are as significant as they are, because compared to what I deal with at work and the kids that I work with and the challenges that their families are facing, he has a lot of skills. He has a lot more, his baseline level is a lot higher. And so I think like for me, accessing services, I think we got him services as we needed. I was like, oh, I can handle this. Like, I'll just handle this. But he probably maybe needed a little more support at a younger age. And I think I just didn't think as much of it. And I do wonder, like, hopefully we'll get people's feedback. I do wonder what other parents who are BCBAs and have neurodivergent children, especially maybe more severe, more profound needs, I wonder what their experience has been. And if they see, does it make it easier to be a BCBA because this is like the population you're used to dealing with and working with? Or is it harder because now this is your life and your job? I think it's a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of BCBAs that have children on the spectrum, and a lot of parents too that actually go into this field to become BCBAs because their children have. If you are one of those parents, reach out to us and let us know your feedback and what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, we'd love to talk to you. Yeah, especially, or if you have a neurotypical child, I would also love to hear what it's like having neurotypical children. I do, my kids have play dates. And I'm like, all right, we got to go. And the other kid is like with their jacket on and my kids still are acting like nobody said anything. I'm like, oh, this is what that's like.
It needs to be rhymed a couple times.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, you just get ready. But my kids do that at other people's houses. So they're also like, I don't know. My kids listen to other people's parents. And I feel like that is like a normal thing.
So talking about parents, right? How do you help other parents understand ABA without like overwhelming them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm very curious on your take on that because I think as a NICU mom where you had a really steep learning curve in the NICU and you had this whole new terminology, because I think it's kind of what you already spoke to of like, this is that was so normalized for all the NICU nurses, and our ABA world is so normalized for us that I would love to hear your perspective on how you've either evolved in that way or what you do working with families from that lens of not overwhelming them with ABA and recognizing like this is not their, just because it's our world doesn't mean that they're at the same level as us, nor should they be.
So I love to kind of break down like I like to go over like some of the goals, right? And then I like to kind of like I always love to share things from a behavioral perspective, but I also like to share too like things are like a shaping process. So it's like sometimes things might might look like we're not really doing anything, but it targets so many different things, especially since early intervention is like my jam. You know what I mean? For instance, like if I'm explaining, oh, like this is receptive ID. So he has to be able to find a picture of something in a field or naturalistically, right? And it's like we could be playing with something and it's like, oh, where is the teddy bear or whatever? And he's got to be able to process the speaker, right? Because there's always a speaker and a listener. And so he's got to be able to scan, but also too, we're playing. So now he's attending to something and he's attending longer. And now we're able to play together and there's joint attention. And now we get to expose to pretend play. So it's like, it might look like we're not really doing much, but we're actually targeting so many different crucial areas that are going to help build these skills and grow on these skills. And they're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. So being able to kind of like explain one simple goal or one activity and share like it's going to hit like the responding piece and now he's joint attention like he's looking and now you're getting paired with reinforcement and building like quality time in a short amount of like that session. They kind of like walk away with like wow, like they have a better understanding of like how simple things that and they could generalize that at home. It's like just spend 5 minutes. Like literally it's like watch and then you're exposing them to different ways to play and like concepts and tacting, which is like labeling things around them like oh no crash, so they really appreciate the insight from that perspective because ABA doesn't have to be so complex, but when you're able to explain the different areas and the skills that they're gaining and getting exposed to and ample opportunities, they really appreciate that kind of lens. So it's not so like, what the heck is this science? What do you mean differential reinforcement? Yeah,
Such a
we can acknowledge what we want to see. Thank you for sharing that. We sit on the chair instead of get off the table.
Yeah, that's one. I think I said this in the last episode too. I always tell people to put energy into the things you want to see more of. I'm not like reinforce the behavior you want to see reoccur. I'm like breathe energy into the things you want to see your child doing more of. So if you want to see them sitting in a chair more, talk about sitting in a chair more. If you don't want to see them on the table, don't talk about them being on the table.
And also too, like making the response effort really low. It's like we want to see them win and be successful. So if you're asking them like, oh, go throw this out and it's too far away, bring the trash can to them. Like, can you throw this out? Thank you. Acknowledge that the effort that they put in. The things that they appreciate too.
Yeah. I think I start with parents by starting really by listening to what's going on with them and then trying to slowly educate them based on what is applied to their lives. You work in EI, I work with kids that tend to be early elementary to early middle school. I do have a couple high schoolers as well. And so I think tends to be more about like behavior management or maybe sometimes verbal behavior development, sometimes executive functioning, emotional regulation. How do I introduce it in a way that feels easy for them? Because a lot of people have also come to me being like, oh, I had this bad experience with this provider, or I had this experience with that provider. And I want them to not feel like ABA is going to like take over their lives, but it's actually going to like insert itself and help support you. Like it's meant to be a support system and not meant to make things harder. And if it's making your life harder to implement my strategies, then it's not necessarily working.
Yeah. 100%.
I think that is something, like thinking about how our personal experiences have shaped my practice. I think that that's something as a BCBA and a parent I have learned over the years where I know in the beginning, if I was doing parent training, I would be like, okay, so like if you can just, sit with your kid at dinner and prompt them, you're going to say, use your fork. And if they're not using their fork, you're going to gesture to it. And then you're going to provide, here's a token board that you're going to use to provide them for sitting and eating with their fork every bite. Oh my God. If somebody gave that to me, I'd be like, are you kidding me?
No, I don't.
If I have a minute, I'm washing the dishes. I'm not sitting next to my kid and prompting them, or I'm like scarfing food in my own face, or we're using dinner as like a family time and like we're all playing a game or something together. I'm not sitting and I'm going to be like, use your fork, use your fork, use your fork, use your fork. Like I want dinner to either be like, we're getting food in you or we're having a whole family experience, not I'm teaching you something at this moment.
Yeah. One of the things too that I like to carry over, especially since we work in a clinic. So it's like, hey, especially with our friends that are non-vocal and they start like emerging language. It's like, I heard him say this. So we're listening to this song. So you can play the song and maybe he'll do it at home too. And then also sharing like different activities that, they really were enjoying and like the interverbals that we're using so that to see if they carry over at home. But it's nice to receive feedback. And it's like, you don't have to take data on it. It's like no data, just like, hey, this is what we saw today. See if he carries that over at home. Really simple.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And helping them like, okay, I would focus on this during mealtime or whatever it is that you know that they could target and generalize at home so that the family can see like, oh my gosh, it did happen at home. And now they're going to carry over that little minute skill. And now the learner's going to have opportunity to be exposed not only in the clinic, but generalized at home.
Yes.
So
Yes,
it's
as
like
opposed to being
always,
like, so we mastered this skill. And so what I want you to do is to present them with this material. But if you're like, hey, I saw this today and it's really cool. Let me know if you see it. It feels like
no
accessible.
effort. And it's more
Yeah.
relatable and like human being, not like
Yeah.
robotic. It's like, take the data. How long? It's like, listen, try this. Let me know how it goes. And then
Yeah.
ask the parent when you see them again, like, did it go? And usually they
Yeah.
text like, oh my God. It's like,
I know. I know. Whenever something good happens, you get a message. Because like I feel like if you're like, oh, take the data, they're like, okay, whatever. And then like you never hear about it again.
yeah.
Yeah. I love that tip. That's so great. I think another piece to your point about like keeping it simple and also positive and like sharing with parents, like, oh, hey, they did this at the center. Let's see if they do it at home. I think what I have learned as a parent and seeing like some of the struggles my kids go through and how stressed out like either I get or my friends about their own kids, whoever it may be, when they're getting negative feedback about their kids is that parents can never have somebody telling them enough positive things about their kids. And like I have some friends whose kids are perfect angels and that they're always the parents are always like, we came out of the parent teacher conference and he helps, like basically like he cures blindness and he, knits mittens for nuns. And you're like, oh, that sounds so lovely. I have another friend who's like, my kid attended 40% of school this week. Woohoo. And like, it can be really hard when your kid has challenges, you're not getting that much positive feedback. And so I really try to work to be that positive person. And you still have to be realistic. Like, yep, your kid is aggressive or your kid is nonverbal, but also like they grabbed my hand today and pulled me over to show me something. That was intentional communication. How cool is that your kid did that with me today? It shows like we're developing a good relationship and like, here's all these amazing things. Or even just like, and I always say this to the kids I work with, and I say it to the parents, your kid is awesome. And I'll say to the kids, like, I had an awesome time with you. Thank you for letting me spend time with you today. Because I just feel that people do not hear that enough. And I feel that as a parent sometimes that like my kids will be put in situations that are hard for them. And then the adults in the room are not encouraging them and not giving them that positive feedback and not reminding them that like, just because this is hard for you or just because you're having a hard time doesn't mean that you're a bad kid. You're still wonderful. And I think that that is something like I really try to pay it forward that like every single time, and because they're hearing something positive about their child. And
Yeah.
I just think there's just not enough often in the special needs communities of that positive feedback. There's often a lot of like doors closing and people saying like, oh, your child's too noisy, your child's too this, your child's too that, your child can't do this, your child can't do that. It sucks
And
really hard.
I always acknowledge effort too. And I share that too with my staff. It's like always acknowledge the effort, even if they were not successful. Thank you so much for trying. You were so close. Like acknowledge that they even tried, especially when our
Yeah.
parents be like more defiant, right? It's like let them be heard and acknowledged. Like I tried. Thank you for sitting. Thank you for just sitting with the group here. Like you said, it's like, wow, I enjoyed all this time we spent together. It's just like, especially our friends that are more aggressive, like you mentioned too, it's like you can always find a way to acknowledge something that they did that was appropriate and nice.
Mhm.
Their internal, like, what is that word I'm trying to find? Just like they feel heard and acknowledged, especially when they're
Mhm.
prone to being like, oh, you're doing this, you're doing wrong, like something wrong. And it's like, no, and enrich them inside and help them feel valued too. It's like, I always acknowledge every effort, everything.
Yeah. I love that. Christina, what would you say to people, to BCBA parents, on how you balance your professional and parent roles? And in particular, like how do you prevent burnout in yourself with everything that you have on your plate?
Yeah, I think when it comes to preventing burnout, right, it's so important to establish like boundaries. That's really what it comes down to, where like these boundaries are crossed and you don't realize that there are boundaries that should have been placed. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've been reinforcing something for so long. But I think it's important to, having that work-life balance of like, hey, I'm not working anymore, right? Like
Mhm.
that's my time to another company because now you have to go and balance your real life experience. So close your laptop, don't reply back
Yeah.
to emails. But I put an automatic email like, hey, reach back out to me during business hour times.
I should do that.
Literally. So it's just like having that strong boundary of like, hey, my work here is done. Now it's time to work at home with my own family and my own life, and decide if you want to use ABA or not. But like going back to what you said, like OBM is so important. So timers to help you transition, like being proactive with like, oh, I got to do laundries on Sundays. I'm going to reset on Saturdays, trying to have
Mhm.
in your own home so that you can have peace of mind. So you're prepared to go to work.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's harder, a little harder. I struggle more because I also do a lot of work at home. And then I think, I don't know, I guess because I'm feeling burnt out today, I'm like, I don't know how I do it. But you know what? I think a big piece is antecedents and also establishing a community, because I really think, and I think for parents who are BCBAs, for parents who are listening, who are parents of children with special needs or parents who are thinking about receiving ABA, find people who are in similar circumstances. I was speaking to a friend the other day and I was saying something about something that was challenging with one of my kids. And she was like, we just had a similar issue. And I think it's a developmental thing. I think it's just like they're getting to this age and this is what comes next. And I think when you can put it into perspective, because oftentimes like if you think everybody else's kids are doing really well and you're not getting that support and that peer network, it feels really lonely and it feels really isolating. And so I have my BCBA mom friends, I have my non-BCBA friends, I have social worker friends. Like I got like a pretty wide net.
Multidisciplinary team.
Yes, I know. I got a pretty wide net. And when I have professional things come up, I have those people, that community as well, that I go to deal with those professional pieces. And so I never feel alone in anything that I'm doing. And I think research has shown, especially in ABA research, that like collegial support ameliorates BCBA burnout and alleviates it and makes it so much better. And I think like, yeah, today I feel burnt out, but it's not like a chronic. I don't feel this way chronically. Today I woke up on the wrong side of the bed and I'm grumpy. Burnout probably isn't the right word to use. I need like, I don't know, 2 weeks worth more of sleep to feel better. But I just think right now I'm really tired. I don't feel this way chronically. And I think it's because of the community that I've established with all of these different people to support myself. And, some of that is, I think, being a single mom as well. But I think whether you're a single parent or in a 2-parent household or multi-generational household, I think making sure that you have those supports, whoever they may be, inside and outside the house and in your work life, can really help prevent burnout.
I love that so much, Nicole. I'm so happy you shared that. And if you're listening and you're like, dang, I do feel alone, go find a Facebook group. Go find a nonprofit in your area. They hold a lot of groups. Like get yourself in an environment with people that are experiencing the same thing as you so that you have someone to share and relate to. But also to help you, especially like age groups of parents, is like, oh yeah, you can kind of expect this around this age, especially like, with puberty and hormones and as they're getting older, because you've been a mom for 11 years, but you don't know what it's like to raise an 18-year-old. You don't know what it's like to be a 16-year-old mom. Like, you see what I mean? So it's so important to have a community, like you mentioned, to feel supported and not alone.
Yes.
If you're feeling alone, please find your own community.
Yes. It's almost like dating, where like I might invite a mom to coffee and we hit it off, or we like do something with the kids together. And, it goes from there. And it's like, now are we texting each other more regularly? Or maybe it's a friend from one of their extracurriculars. And so then, we're spending more time together and we see like, maybe we do get along or our values align. So like, let's do something and like go out for dinner together without all the children or with the children or whatever. And I think those relationships evolve naturally and they don't happen overnight. But I think a lot of it has been through my kids. But there's also, in my area, we have a special education parent advisory committee that's really active. So I think, looking for those spaces to find parents who are living your experience and, like you said, at similar ages, and not being afraid to ask. That's one of the drawbacks of social media, is that oftentimes we think everybody else is doing well and everything's going well for them.
And if you're a parent that's receiving ABA therapy, especially at a clinic, talk to the other parents.
Yeah.
No, your kids are spending all day with the other friends. Have time, have coffee with the other parent, and like their perspective, and you'll form a bond and community there too.
Tell the BCBAs that they can share your contact information, because I've had this come up so many times where somebody will ask and they'll say like, oh, apparently we're not allowed to get other parents' contact information. Okay, but you give permission to share yours.
Yeah.
I can't give you Johnny's parents' contact information, but I can give Johnny's parents your contact information. So like, you don't have to take no for an answer. I feel like you can find you can find a way in, or say like, hey, I want to start a WhatsApp group with the parents. Can you? And like places that push back, that's like a whole separate thing we could talk about. Places that push back on all the parents connecting, that's like a yellow to red flag for me. Like, why don't you want all the parents to talk to each other? Those parents should have a sense of community. So I feel like if somebody pushes back, like obviously like HIPAA rules, they can't give you other people's contact information. But if you're like, hey, I'm trying to establish this community, can you connect other parents to me, and they resist it? Why? Any final notes before we sign off?
No, I think this was such a great conversation. We'll have to have more of these for sure. It's fun talking about parenting and ABA and how we use it with our kids in our home
Yeah.
and for our
Yeah.
communities.
I think we definitely reach out to us if you have other topics within parenting and ABA that you want to hear more about. I feel like I would love to talk more about developmental norms and expectations, because we're not introducing kids to developmentally appropriate toys as behavior analysts. So I feel like that's a whole other topic of like, how do you keep up and how do we help normalize these, how do we be neurodiversity affirming and developmentally appropriate and understand what to expect at each age? Like that's like a huge task, but I think it's possible. So if you have other topics, please reach out to us. We'd love to discuss either with you or make sure that we cover it.
Yes. And like and subscribe to our channel.
Yes.
All right, guys. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk soon.